Hello everyone, welcome to the Idea Roastery. I'm Jason.
And I'm Herman.
Herman, you just got back from a big trip, not just the Japan one, but you had another trip in between. How was it?
So it was to California. The reason being is, unfortunately, we had a death in the family, and my brother and my mother were planning to go and visit my uncle who was in hospice, but unfortunately he passed away before they could make the trip. So my mother cancelled her trip, and my brother asked if I wanted to instead go and do a little road trip down the California coast. As you know, just I've never been to California, and there's a lot of, it's sort of like the heart of media in the world. Like I've seen a lot of California in movies and series and all that, so I decided to do that. However, the flight there, so I'm in South Africa.
It's a long haul.
Yeah, in order to get to the West Coast, it is crazy. So it's first a 16-hour flight from Cape Town to New York, and then an additional 7-ish hour flight from New York to San Francisco. Combined, it's about 23 hours if you include like a 2-hour layover. However, we everything that could go wrong with our flight did.
Oh,
so
no.
First, getting to the airport, I got stuck in traffic for about an hour and a half, but I'd allocated time for that. So by the time I got to the airport, I was already sick of sitting. Got onto the airplane, and as we're taxiing for takeoff, to the runway, a lady starts having like a psychological meltdown. She keeps on trying to like get out of her seat and then sits down and is very frantic. And so one of the hosts, they stop the airplane, one of the hostesses goes and sort of checks in on her, and she's not super comprehensible. There's something going on. She's panicking, and then she's vacillating between wanting to stay on the flight and wanting to get off the flight and wanting to stay on the flight and wanting to get off the flight. And so she was obviously like very mentally distressed. And because this is a 16-hour flight, the air hostess, and I agree with her, deemed that it would not be safe for her to embark on a 16-hour flight if she is, potentially in need of assistance. So turned the plane around on the runway, took it back to the gate, and deplaned this lady. So then we took off, but I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, we will have like 20 minutes after landing in New York to get on our next flight. And but we have to go through TSA, like security over there. And so naturally,
big dogs.
Naturally, like my brother and I are running through the airport. We skipped the TSA line. Well, we jumped to the front of the TSA line, and we got an earful from one of the agents. We're like, "Our plane's leaving. I'm sorry, there was this delay." And so in the line, bumped into an old friend of mine who lives in the UK, which was pretty cool. But I'm like, I have a plane to catch. Dashed off. So naturally didn't make that flight.
Oh, wow.
Got to the gate. The flight had been delayed by 5 hours, which is actually fine. Like I can sit through 5 hours of layover. I call up my friend who we'd just bumped into, and we have some coffee with them. Unbeknownst to us, our flight was delayed again, this time by 12 hours, right? So I'm looking at this, we're going to be sitting in this airport for 12 hours, and I'm like, let's go and speak to someone, see if they can put us on an earlier flight. So I look at my booking, and they just switched us over to an earlier flight, but it was on the other side of the airport. So my brother and I take off running. Now keep in mind, we're like tired from a 16-hour flight, so we're running to the other side of the airport, and we make it to the gate right as our airplane is just reversing out.
Oh no.
So we just missed that plane. So we ended up having to spend the 12 hours at the airport. So we checked into the United Lounge, and just as a bit of a side note, first experience of American food. There was literally a counter that was just chunks of cheese, but like there was a white cheese and there was a yellow cheese, but it wasn't even like sliced or like cut into cubes or anything. It was broken by hand. It was literally just chunks of cheese. So So then we
At least it's not in a can, man.
I know. So then we sat at this lounge for 10 hours, and our flight. We managed to board our next flight to San Francisco, and we get out onto the runway, and a thunderstorm comes in, and it grounds all the planes. So we're sitting on this runway for about 2 hours, and there's just
You sat on the runway?
On the runway.
In the bus?
Yeah, no, like in the plane.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So
and so they're like, come
ready
they
to go.
serve us some refreshments, just like, hey. So then the pilot comes on the intercom or whatever you would call it and says like, hey folks, if we don't manage to take off the next half an hour, we're gonna have to turn around and go back to the gate to refuel.
I know.
And I'm like 30 hours into travel at this point. I'm so tired and I'm stinky.
Man.
And I'm just resigned to it. Like, yeah, we'll see if I don't get there, if I don't make it.
I couldn't trigger.
But luckily enough, the storm clears just enough for us to take off. Off we go. I managed to kind of like have some rough, like 1 or 2 hours of sleep on that flight. Land in San Francisco, and I think that this was a mistake, but we did make it safely, is we got our rental car, and so after about 40 hours of travel, so we're super tired, and we have to drive on the right-hand side of the road for the first time, make our way to the hotel. So it was like both my brother and I, like me being co-driver, him being driver, got us to the hotel safely. My flight back was perfectly fine. Managed to get onto all of my flights. None of them were delayed.
Sleep well that night?
Oh, we did. Yeah, for sure. But so that's
wow.
That is my. I'm uninterested in doing another international trip for a while. I'm so tired.
Yeah. And do you think it was any fault of like in an airline sense, or was it just misfortune? Or
it's just misfortune. Like we flew with United, and like they did do everything right. It was, they had someone who was acting out on the plane, and I think I agree that they were correct to deplane them. They did put us on a flight once, on a new flight once our plane was delayed, but we were just unfortunately on the other end of the airport and couldn't make it to the gate in time. They couldn't have taken off in a thunderstorm, and I'm glad that they didn't try. So overall, it was just bad luck. And one of the things that I had to keep on remembering is it's so incredible that you can travel from one side of the world all the way to the other side of the world in like a day. 100, 200 years ago, it would take like a month, and 20% of the people who boarded the ship would be dead from scurvy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is a modern marvel. What's your strategy on night versus day flights? Do you have a theory on which one is better?
You tell me your theory, and then I'll tell you mine.
So me and my wife have differing views on this. My view is that night flights are better because you can at least somewhat get a little bit of your circadian rhythm to push you into somewhat of a sleep, where she's very adamant that day flights are better because she'd rather waste the day flying and arrive and then have a good night's rest and then be ready for the next day straight away. So it's a constant like battle, and unfortunately like flights tend to their prices tend to fluctuate whether it is a night flight and a day flight, and actually day flights tend to be a little bit more cheaper. And specifically me going from UK to South Africa, it's quite a common cause. But yeah, I mean for me I think the night flight is better, but as a tall dude, it's also like uncomfortable irrespective of whether it's day or night.
I flew back from the US on KLM, which is Royal Dutch Airlines.
Yeah.
But I had so much legroom over there that it's either because the planes are more modern. I was on a 787 Dreamliner, so very modern with the little windows that you can change the opacity.
Yeah, they've got that like fading like the lights on the roofs and stuff.
But I had so much leg space, and I assume it's because the Dutch are all so tall.
They're big people. Yeah.
It would be terrible for the Dutch airlines to get planes that Dutch people's legs can't fit in. So that worked out pretty well. But I'm I find flying in general just to be terribly uncomfortable day or night. However, I'd say that I lean more towards your wife's theory over here, because I find that if I do a nighttime flight, I'm so tired the next day because of the bad quality of the sleep that I got on the flight that I waste the next day anyway. So I might as well waste the day, period, but then have a good night of sleep on both ends of it.
Did you do any tactics for jet lag?
Yes, melatonin.
Melatonin, okay.
Melatonin at the at the destination at the time that you're supposed to go to sleep over there. So like in my case, like 8 p.m. in the evening, both on the way, both when I arrived there and also when I got back. It just like helps kick your circadian rhythm into the right thing. I had pretty bad jet lag when I got back, waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I found melatonin definitely does help. On my flight back from Japan, actually on my flight to Japan and back, because I know that really long flights are so rough on the body, we instead flew to Singapore and spent one night in Singapore and then flew the rest of the way the next day. And that is actually very doable. I think the hardest part is like finishing a 10-hour flight and then laying over in an airport tired and like just nasty, and then knowing that you have like another 10-hour flight to get on. That's tough.
Yeah. And what is your theory on how long between like a long haul flight? Because you said now that you're like done with flying for a while. Do you think that prevents people, like just in general or yourself, from going more places, or is it just?
I think the thing is that like I've done a lot of flying this year. To and from Japan was really long. To and from the United States even longer. I had plans to go to a conference in Iceland in September, but I think I'm not going to do that. I'm firstly because the coffers are empty, and also just because I don't want to sit on a tube in the sky, no matter how miraculous of an invention it is. Do you know that air travel is the safest form of transport, including safer than walking?
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it's they're just so incredibly safe, and yet at the same time, like every time there's a bit of turbulence, I'm like, I've watched Air Crash Investigation.
Yeah, I usually watch it right before the flight.
What's your packing situation when you go?
I think it has evolved over the years. The places I've been recently are more like the biggest trip I did recently was like Thailand about a year or so ago.
I guess you went to Sweden.
Yeah, so the great thing about the UK is that you can do small flights like here and there, which is different to going to like somewhere far off, right? Where I feel like my theory is that the amount of hours you spend on the flight should be about the same amount of days you stay at the location. So I never go like 10-hour flight for like two days, right? That sounds like ridiculous. And I've met people who have done that. And so I kind of at least know that if it's going to be far, it's going to be like a lot longer. But I generally like try to stick to just like one suitcase. But I've got like quite a nice rollery one.
Is that carry-on or checked-in?
I try to prefer carry-on a lot of the time because I can pack quite light. But actually, more recently, I've kind of just preferred to just check it all in, because then you just like have like a backpack and it's so much easier to just like walk around. You can like, you get a lot more freedom from it. I don't know if it's an age thing or something, but I still tend to pack too much. I think like, you pack you pack enough pants as if you're going to shit yourself every day kind of stuff. Like it's so I haven't quite clocked it, but I'm also quite frugal when it comes to wearing the same shirts over and over again. I remember you did quite a few journeys with just one single backpack.
I'm still doing that.
You're still doing it?
Yeah, I've actually refined my pack list. So having just a single smallish backpack is definitively the best way to travel. And I can say this having tried all the other ways, packing a lot, having checked luggage, etc. For example, my terrible flight to the US would have been so much worse if I had checked some bags, because my flights were so messed up that I don't know where my bag would have been. And also, being stuck at the airport, I could at least get in there into my backpack and change my shirt and all that stuff. Like, yeah, you can plan ahead by putting a fresh shirt in your backpack if you know you're going to have a layover. But what happened once to my brother is his flights got messed up so badly traveling via Istanbul from Poland that he had to spend 3 days in Istanbul. Now, it would have been really tough had his checked bag found its way to South Africa, but he'd been stuck in Istanbul and he'd have to rebuy everything. The trick I found to packing super light is I have 3 merino wool t-shirts. They never get dirty and they never stink. So you can re-wear them quite a few times. Some people argue that you can re-wear them like 10, 20 times. I haven't. I've tried that, and they smell perfectly fine. But the knowledge that I've been wearing this for so long is kind of gross. So what I do is I have about enough underwear and socks for a week, and then I have 1 pair of pants, 1 pair of shorts, and these 3 shirts. And then I keep a little bottle of detergent under 100 mils with me, washing detergent, and I can actually just rinse out my shirts like after 2 or 3 wears and just put them on a hanger and let them dry in the hotel room. And this way, I've always got a fresh shirt, I've always got fresh underpants and fresh socks. And the only times that I ever feel like I need more pants is if I like spill something on my pants, but then I'll just wear my shorts and I'll rinse out my pants in the hotel sink as well. And that just works out really, really well. And I never have too much stuff kicking around. I always feel like I've got the right amount.
Have you ever traveled somewhere cold though? Like, what do you do in terms of like jackets and like?
Yeah, so the trick over there is layering, right? So when we arrived in Japan, it was still the end of Japanese winter, so it was quite cold in Tokyo, and so I have my merino shirt, but then I also have like a light jersey, right? And then I also have like a rain shell, but that looks quite nice. It's like an anorak. And so if it's, fairly mild, I just put the jersey on. If it's quite cold, I put the jacket on. And then for Emma, who gets a little bit colder than me, she travels with a set of lightweight thermals as well. So you add that thermal layer and now you're super toasty. And so you can like adjust for how cold it is by just adding or removing layers.
I think also you have a benefit because where you live is actually like pretty reasonable. So one of the challenges of living in London is that it's so freaking cold just to get to the airport that you have to like layer up just to get to the airport. And then when you're at the airport, you have to now stuff all the stuff that you've been wearing just into a backpack. And it's not even it's like an hour to get to the airport in some cases.
It was actually middle of winter when I left Cape Town to head to the United States. And what I did is I'm just like, it's going to be warm where I'm going, and the airport and the plane are going to be reasonably warm. So I just put a shirt on, and then I put my sort of like light jersey on, and I just went to the airport like that, and I was cold between my apartment and the Uber, and then between the Uber and the airport, but then everything else was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Whereas my brother made the mistake that you're describing, and he rocked up with a jacket and beanie and all of that stuff, and then he had to just lug that around the US for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's so annoying. It's almost like you need to have like a little lockup box. I guess if you drive yourself and you have your car, maybe you could like just stuff all your stuff in your car and just keep it there for the night.
Yeah, and since we were doing a road trip, it was a lot easier because we just tossed everything in the boot. But I'd say that a couple of other things that are really important is eye drops for the plane, because it just gets so dry in there, and then like some painkillers just in case you have a headache. Like sitting on a plane with a headache is really tough, and also the crew aren't allowed to give you painkillers because if you have a adverse reaction to paracetamol and die, that's a huge liability for the airline. Yeah.
And do you rate America? Do you think it's like a good place to go, good place to travel, or is it?
Oh, it's a tough one. So the problem is that I just experienced Japan, and Japan and the US are on 2 completely different ends of the spectrum. It's like the Japanese cities like really care about the people, whereas American cities don't. So in Japanese cities, everything is like there aren't cars just lining the streets and free parking everywhere and all stretched out. They're actually fairly compact, and you can walk down the streets and you can pop into interesting stores, and the streets are so clean in Japan. Like literally, I know we did a whole episode on this, but like I couldn't find a single piece of trash, whereas US cities are stretched out, car-centric. It's difficult to get from point A to point B without a car. And the United States, I've heard tell of the homelessness and fentanyl crisis that's been going on over there, but I didn't realize how bad it was until I was there.
I thought you were going to say it. I thought you were going to go the other way. It's like, oh, it's not that bad.
No, it's really bad. So like South Africa has a homelessness problem and a poverty problem, but at least inside of the city, there are a couple of parts of, say, Cape Town where it's visible, but it's not as dramatic as in the States. In the States, and I think this is, like fentanyl plays a big role in that, is that in South Africa, when there's homeless people, and especially if they approach you, the value exchange is fairly obvious. They'll be like, hey, my guy, do you have like some money so I can buy some food? In the United States, it's weird. Like they will be like climbing up the walls and chewing on their hands, and their eyes are just wild, and they're like screaming at themselves. And so I'm actually not too sure. Like naturally I don't have any solutions for this. This is a much broader problem of like housing affordability and PTSD, because a lot of these people are ex-military, and then just the proliferation of these pretty terrible drugs. And so I don't misunderstand. I thought that the United States was quite neat in certain ways, but also terribly car-centric, expensive, and run down in others.
The thing about the US, which I've always found appealing, is it's one country with like 100 different cities and 100 different landscapes, kind of like similar to South Africa. Actually, South Africa, you get everything from desert to rainforest to like in savannah. It's a very diverse country. UK, you get like grass, hills, and rain
yeah,
most
for
of the
sure.
time. So I think that's one of the things that you can kind of go, and there's a lot to see. And obviously the American sort of optimism, I've always found kind of shines through in the people. I don't know if you had many interactions with people. They definitely seem a bit more upbeat and a bit more like...
Americans are incredibly friendly. Like if the media, and naturally American media filters down to the rest of the world, you read American media, you just assume that like all Americans are at each other's throat the entire time, but they're actually just like really friendly. Like, don't misunderstand, there's political turmoil going on in the United States, and for very good reason, but as a day-to-day thing, like people are just incredibly friendly, and Americans love to chat. Like you just like wherever you go, like they're happy to chat. They'll like, hey man, that's a nice bike, and you're like, oh, thank you very much. And they're like, oh yeah, where are you from? I'm like, oh, from South Africa. Like, oh, South Africa. Well, when I was in the military, I was stationed in Djibouti. That's an honest conversation that I had.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But no, they're super lovely people, and naturally like a huge diversity of people. Like everyone is incredibly different, and there's a lot less. They're very self-confident people.
Yeah. Would you say like I guess like you mentioned, I mean the actual art of getting to the location is pretty tough, and I think it's partly because of just flying has gotten worse, but also because South Africa is so freaking far away from everywhere. It's just far away here. I think the only benefit is that you're not in Australia or New Zealand, where it's even further away from anything interesting. If you were living closer, do you think you would be doing a lot more travel, or would you?
It's tough to say. Is that like I'm always torn between travel and sort of like nurturing the community that I have at home. Every time that it's opportunity cost, right? Is like when you're traveling, you're missing out on what's happening here. And like my homies are here, my family is here, and I have my workshop, and we're trying to like create like this little community around the workshop. We've got this lockbox that anyone in this private WhatsApp group can just go and use it for the events and everything that they want to do. And so I think if you think about how I used to travel previously, it used to be like away for 3 months at a time. 3, maybe even 4. Whereas now I'm going max a month. I start to miss home at around the month mark, and so yeah.
And how are you going about choosing locations? Like, so what is your sort of strategy? Because obviously Japan was like, is that like always wanted to go, like,
Dude,
or
I'm
do
a
you
bit of a
just pick from a
weeb.
list?
No, it's like I've always wanted to go to Japan. Like Japan has always had like this. They're such a big exporter of media, not just anime. And I've been told many times that like Japan is a really neat place to go and visit, and it absolutely is. But there was a secondary thing, is that with the weakening yen, it actually became affordable for a South African to travel there, which was actually quite nice. It's about cost comparable to Cape Town in many ways right now, whereas the United States is so expensive. And it's not even like 20-30% more expensive. It's like 3, 4, 5 times more expensive depending on what you're doing. Like just, some Chinese takeout costs as much as fine dining in Cape Town.
It's crazy, yeah. Which I guess highlights why so many Americans should be like coming to visit Cape Town, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, not too many, because you keep it for themselves.
A few of you.
Yeah, no. I think for me, it's like, well, also being more in Europe, it's like a little bit easier to get around for.
And there's
even
such a
like
big diversity of places you can go to.
Exactly. Well, yes and no. Like, there's a diversity, but like what I've found traveling in Europe specifically is it's kind of a bit samey. Like, I mean, everywhere's got like a town center that's like maybe the old city, and everyone's got like some sort of water feature, like a river or something that you can walk along, and they all kind of like, they've all got museums, and they've all got the kind of like the same thing. So I think my view is to try and go to like more remote places. I think that's more of my idea, because I mean, also living in London, you get like the cityscape feel a lot. I've never been to New York, so I'd probably do something like that as well, just for the sake of it. But a lot of travel is just for like, had a wedding that we attended, or you have like something you go to. Banner likes to go away on a like sort of birthday and stuff. So those are like cool little like small trips. But I think that most of the time, like when I'm traveling, I'm looking to do something that's like a little bit like outside of the norm. And also it's about like cultural experience. So I went to Egypt recently, and that was really awesome. Got a completely different perspective, and also was to go see like pyramids, which is something I've always like admired in a sense. And yeah, it was a good experience. And I feel like I always remind myself of like, don't look don't judge a book by its cover whenever I go traveling, because I always think about it in some way, and you come back thinking about it in a completely different way.
Completely, yeah. I think that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about both Southeast Asia and East Asia, is that it's so different to like South Africa in many ways is quite. It's an interesting combination of like westernized, but also inherently South African. So South Africa is very unique for, let's say, for instance, Europeans or Americans coming here. Whereas me going to Europe or the United States is not that big of a, cultural difference. But going to Vietnam or going to Indonesia or Japan or Nepal, those are all very culturally unique, very, like the built environment is incredibly unique as well. The nature is very unique. And so those are all very unique experiences. And also whenever I think about like, okay, where can I go? Everywhere's far away. I've spent a decent amount of time in sub-Saharan Africa, but I'm kind of done traveling in the neighboring countries for now. It's tough.
Is it mostly just because of like diseases and lack of infrastructure? Or
the infrastructure is really bad.
Yeah. Do you travel for like do you have like relaxation as your main goal, or is it like
it's more
like
to go and experience a new place and culture and people and to learn, and yeah, for sure. And in some cases it's to attend conferences. So like I was in Istanbul last year for MicroConf, and I'm not going this year because I just don't want to get in a plane again, but otherwise Reykjavik would have been my next destination.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I saw that they're going to launch like I think the world's longest flight, which is from Sydney to London, and
wow.
I think it's like something ridiculous, like 18, 20 hours, or I don't know how long.
That is crazy. It's like, I'm sure that it's technically possible because, we're really good at building things. But to me, it's like, is it feasible for humans to like be in the plane for that long? Because like 16 hours is already, 6 hours more than my body can handle.
22 hours London, Sydney non-stop.
Wow.
And I saw this video. It's quite cool because what they do is they kind of go like up and then they go over the North Pole and then they come down. So when you come into London, you're coming basically from the north. It's like obviously some like calculated route that's like, the most fuel efficient.
I love looking at the little flight globe to watch your flight path, because whenever we look at maps, we tend to look at a Mercator projection. And so they're like, okay, I'm here in, let's say, for instance, my flight back home was from San Diego to Amsterdam to Cape Town. And the flight from San Diego to Amsterdam, you look at them on the map and you think, oh, you just draw a straight line between them, but it's actually a globe. And so we fly up and over like Greenland, Iceland, and then we come down over the UK and into Amsterdam.
I think that's also because of the Gulf Stream or the jet stream that they use to get across. But it's also like, it's really fun because it's like I kind of knew America was big, but I didn't really comprehend like how like freaking big it actually is. Like
that's huge.
That in Australia, like to just like even going just across, like the pilot says like, oh, we're just going across Australia, and it's like it starts, and then like 4 hours later, you're still like halfway across. It's crazy.
I'd say just based on how long everything takes to get across, is my one bit of advice for doing a long flight is just take your time with everything you do, right? So like when they bring you your meal, like spend the time to just like slowly nibble away at it, and then when it's done, like take the time to take all the wrapping and everything and put it into like the neatest little pile that you can, see if like how compact you can make it, and then when you go to the bathroom, like do your business or whatever, and then like wash your hands and maybe splash some water in your face and dry it off and pop in some eye drops. Like you're not in a rush to do anything, quite to the contrary. So
I think for me as well, like as I've become more experienced at flying, I've definitely gone towards the route of like give myself as much time as possible. I used to be all about like, oh, I'll just make it, and actually South Africa is quite bad because you can kind of go to an airport about 30 minutes before your flight and get on and go pretty regularly. But that's no way the case like anywhere in Europe. So and that's also like part of the downside is that you sometimes just getting to the airport, checking in and actually boarding your flight can be like 3 or 4 hours, and the flight's like 2 hours, and it's like and so that like so now although I'm trying to be more efficient, I like actually just give myself so much space so that I'm never like stressed about like, am I going to miss a flight, or is there going to be a delay, or is this bus going to break down, and like my peace of mind is just way better.
So also, cost is the thing, and you sometimes see those flights on like Skyscanner or something where they're like, oh, it's $200 less, but you fly here, and then you have a layover in Addis Ababa, and then you find your way home. And now I'm like, I don't know if I can handle that many connections, and I've more than once experienced not making a connection, and so each extra connection adds the risk of a missed flight and then having to rebook or whatever. But the longest travel time that I ever did, I was fairly broke, but I was gonna meet up with my friend Tanner in Casablanca in Morocco. And so I was looking at flights, and I know this doesn't sound like the right place, but I found the cheapest flight I've ever seen from Cape Town to Frankfurt. It was only 200 euros to fly from Cape Town to Frankfurt. And so what had happened is it was Lufthansa, and they'd come in, they just offloaded a whole bunch of German tourists over here, and it was a completely empty flight on the way back. So they were selling them at dead bottom prices. And I was one of very few people on this flight, so I had like the 4 seats in the middle to sleep on, and arrived in Frankfurt. And then I'm like, since I'm in Germany, I should visit a friend up in Hamburg. So I took a bus up to Hamburg, and then from Hamburg, I took a shared car, like BlaBlaCar, from Hamburg to Utrecht in the Netherlands. And then from Utrecht, I took a train down to Tilburg where I met another friend of mine. And then from Tilburg, I went to Brussels because there was a really inexpensive flight from Brussels to Casablanca. And that's how I got to Casablanca.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's awesome, dude. I think it's like,
It was a great trip.
Yeah.
And I got to like pop by 2 friends in Europe along the way.
Yeah. I think that's also the great thing about Europe is it's just like quite compartmentalized, quite compact. So you can do cool things like that. So you won't be traveling for very far very soon. So hopefully we'll be getting more podcast or recordings in.
Yeah, we have been a little bit erratic during the travel time because the time zones change and all that. But yeah, I'm home for a bit.
Yeah, but good having you back, man. And this has been good.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers. Ciao.